Woodlife, and I'm a veterinary medical officer with the North Carolina Department of Agriculture. I have actually been with the department for 28 years. When I got out of vet school, I actually specialized in swine medicine and did a lot of work in the eastern part of the state. And various things happen through life, and you get married, and you kind of change roles, and you don't think about all those other issues when you're coming through school. So I managed to get a job with the Department of Agriculture then because they really needed a swine veterinarian to clean up this disease we had called pseudorabies. So I did that, worked on that program. We got rid of pseudorabies here in North Carolina, and then I was able to become one of the field veterinarians. I did put up an updated map. Normally we have 4 veterinary medical officers throughout the state, but unfortunately one left last March and is now working for one of the counties. I had another individual, he retired at the end of the year, so that leaves me and Dr. Law, and the 2 of us are having to cover the entire state. So I'm basically doing from this area all the way to the coast, and she takes this area and she goes all the way west. So we've been busy, to say the least. But I'm glad to be here. Like some people have always said, I'm here from the government and I'm here to help. But this is the way I like to help people. Take care of each other. Okay? All right. So I am here to talk about EIA. Okay, Equine Infectious Anemia. That is something, how many of you have heard about the little outbreak, and I want to say little, but it's actually a big outbreak that has been going on since our first case was diagnosed November 21st. Good, because I've been spending a lot of time in this area. It's starting to look like the back of my hand. EIA is caused by a virus. It's a lentivirus. We're an RNA virus. One thing that I will say that when I've tried to discuss this with a lot of people, think of this virus almost like AIDS for horses. Okay, it causes anemia. Okay, now there is no cure and there's no vaccine. People with AIDS, and I think of it this way because people think of it that way. I try to put things where you can think about it and what's relative. People with AIDS, a lot of times, they look fine. Do you know that everybody has AIDS that are out there? No, you do not. They're asymptomatic. However, something will cause them to get stressed. That virus will start circulating. And when that virus starts circulating, that's when they can easily spread it. They run a fever. They lose weight. They have respiratory issues. Basically, they become more anemic. This virus kills red blood cells. Okay? So all those little issues will come around, and that's what you see. We call it in vet school going ADR, ain't doing right, okay? It's just kind of there. You got a fever, go off feed, lose weight. Then they'll recover from that, and then you don't notice anything, and they'll go around for a little while, and you don't notice it, then it may come back again, okay? Think about it that way. Same thing happens with horses if they have this particular virus, okay? But it is a lifelong infection, okay? There is no cure at all. How is it transmitted? It's transmitted through blood, okay? She was talking about spread by biting flies. It is spread by horse flies, deer flies. How do you think they spread it, and how far can it go? A fly can actually go out like 880 yards or 860 yards or something like that. And the reason I say that is our regulations go out 880 yards, okay? What happens is when a fly happens to fly around and it bites an infected horse, and it's got virus circulating through its bloodstream. That fly comes up, and when he bites, he takes his mouth parts and he injects an enzyme through the skin to help break that skin and the tissue down so it can suck the blood back out, okay? How many times have you gone around and you see these big horse flies and it's irritating your horse's back and you slap it? You get blood all in between your fingers and everywhere? Okay, well, if that fly did not finish its blood meal and get completely full and the horse swishes it away, then it flies over to the next horse, okay? What does it do there? The same thing it did at the first one. It bites, injects those mouthpieces, injects the enzyme, which also has some blood in it, which also has the virus in it. So it's just like a needle going straight into that horse. And so that's how it's spread through the flies, okay? And it will keep doing that. If you keep switching it off, it's gonna keep flying around. So if you've got pastures and you've got horses in different areas, all within 880 yards of each other, then that fly can actually carry that virus 3/4 of a mile out away from the infected horse, okay? So that's where the flies come in and the natural carrier. Also iatrogenic, which means we do it. Spread through dirty needles. Some people don't want to buy new needles for every horse that they have. They do vaccines. They use dirty needles, different IV sets, surgical equipment. It can even be in dental equipment, floating equipment. If you get blood and stuff in there, it's when you should clean and disinfect anywhere between all of your different horses that you do. And it also could possibly come through like wire bits. If you've got a really rough horse and you gotta get that twisted wire bit, and how many times do you get a little blood in the corner of your mouth? And if you happen to share that bit and go get into another horse and start riding it again, you could possibly have some in there if it didn't dry and kill the virus before you move from horse to horse. So anything that can carry contaminated blood can spread it between the horses, okay? So you got, and lip tattooing equipment, anything that could get any type of blood contamination can be spread if it's used between different animals, okay? Again, what do you see? They have a fever, bleeding abnormalities, again they become anemic, a progressive weakness, they get weight loss, they seem depressed, they're just not doing right, and it can lead to death, okay? The one case, the first case that was found the 1st of November was actually found by Dr. Lopresti here at this clinic. Horse just wasn't doing right. She pulled some blood, came back positive. I'll go through a little bit more about how we have to come back to that, but if a private veterinarian tests a horse and it has a non-negative, they have to call it non-negative if a regulatory person did not take that, but anyway, it shows up positive, then one of the people from NCDA, which is me or one of my technicians, we have to go out, retest the horse, make sure that it's the horse in question, okay, and that gets sent in. So I think it was a Monday or a Tuesday that she saw the horse. Anyway, the results came back in. I got the results late Friday afternoon. I got out to see the horse on Monday afternoon. The horse was barely able to walk out of the stall. And I took that blood sample. That horse was dead before daylight Tuesday morning. Okay. That was our first index case that we found here in the area. So it does cause death. A lot of people are like, oh, this is just a way for the government to get money. We don't get any money out of this, okay? It's a regulatory program set up so that we can protect the horse industry, okay? It takes us to come out there and say, I'm sorry, but we've got to take care of this, okay? It's not an easy job for me to do, but we have to do it because we have to look at the big picture. We've got to protect all of our horses here in North Carolina. So again, you can have some horses that are asymptomatic, may not see anything at all, okay? How do we diagnose it? We take a blood sample and we do the actual Coggins test. It's an agar gel immunodiffusion test. Leroy Coggins is the veterinarian that actually created that test. That's why it's called a Coggins test. We are lucky enough now that we can do an ELISA, and that's an approved method now in North Carolina, which is a quick test for us, which is where those people on Friday afternoon or Thursday and you need that quick, oh my gosh, I don't have my Coggins and I'm going to the show. Okay, that's where you're lucky enough to get the ELISA test. The AGID test, it actually takes 24 hours to set up, so that's not a quick one, okay? But if there's anything that shows up on an ELISA test, they can have some false positives. If anything shows up on that test, they have to run the agar gel test to confirm it, okay? And when do you have to have a test? You have to have a test, you would prefer to have it annually. but it's definitely required for exhibits, and under the EIA regulations, it's when any equine are gathered by 3 or more owners. So when you go to a competition, there's more than 3 owners there. Boarding stables, they should all have it. Anytime you cross state lines, you're required to have it. Changing ownership, that means if you sell it, or if you give it away, it does not matter. If you change ownership, you must have a current negative Coggins, okay? And of course, going through auctions and sales. We are lucky enough now here in North Carolina that some of our horse sales actually have a mobile EIA lab that can come there, so the veterinarians can come, pull the blood, run the ELISA test, and you can have a negative test before you take it home, okay? I will suggest this, that if you go to a sale or if you purchase a horse from anybody, one, don't even think about it unless you've got a negative Coggins, and by law, it's got to be within the last 12 months. However, incubation period can be up to 45 days. So if that, me personally, I don't care how soon it was, as soon as I got that horse, I would test it again, okay? Just to be on the safe side. And I would isolate that horse away from others. Or before I even picked it up from the farm, I'd say, yes, I'm still interested, but I want another test today. And I would have it done before it ever left the farm, okay? Because I'll talk a little bit more about what happens when we find a positive. But I would want to make sure I had a negative test right then, before I ever took it onto my farm and introduced it to any of my other equines, okay? There's no vaccine, no treatment, and of course there's no public health concerns, even though I suggested the equine AIDS, it is no threat to humans whatsoever. That's just a good virus that people can realize and relate to, okay? So under the regulations, by law, you are required to have a negative test within 12 months. And if you go to a state-owned facility, you'll have individuals like myself or any of our technicians. We actually go and check these. And nope, we don't give you a grace period. A lot of times we'll get there and say, well, it just ran out yesterday. Like, nope, sorry, you either get one tested now or you leave. You got 2 hours. You either get full blood or you leave. Okay, they're not allowed to stay on the facility whatsoever, okay? You got 12 months, I mean, why do you need a grace period, right? That's what we say, but we do. And we pay real close attention to these charts. A lot of people like to make changes to these charts, okay? So that's another reason why if you're looking at a horse that you're gonna purchase and you're looking at that chart, if it looks a little weird, I wouldn't always trust it, okay? Because I get a lot of complaints and I do a lot of investigative work about people who buy a horse. Well, it had this Coggins, but there was an issue with it, so we deal with that a lot. But you want to make sure that it's valid and look for dates, look for markings. They may change the markings. All kinds of issues can result from them making changes in these Coggins because they don't want to spend the money to get one test, okay? And trust me, after you hear what the results are for what I've been dealing with, it's well worth paying the money to get your Coggins test and make sure you're up to date, okay? Again, it's required for all equines 6 months age of older and any animals that commingle or change ownership, okay? That's the gist of all of our EIA regulations here for North Carolina. So again, you want to make sure that you test all equine, okay? That includes horses, donkeys, mules, zebras, okay? All equine. Charts. Everybody's pretty much familiar with the charts. One thing that you need to make sure of, in particular, on these charts, when the veterinarians come out, we are not perfect. We try to be, but veterinarians are not perfect. And they get in a hurry, and things happen. You want to look at that chart. If you get a chance, look at that chart before your veterinarian leaves, and you look at that paperwork, and you look at that horse. You know your horse better than anybody else. If you've got a particular scar, if you've got a particular dark spot, if you've got anything on that horse that is specific for that horse, then it needs to be drawn in and written down at the bottom. The lines at the bottom, that's where we write the descriptions, okay? I tell a lot of people that you want to make sure this chart matches your horse specifically. It's almost like the title to your car. In case your horse gets loose, in case it gets stolen, anything like that, you've got a piece of paper here that's got your name on it and the complete identification of your horse, okay? Because you want to know. How many people have bays in here? All right. How many of those all have a star? Is there anything else? How would you know the difference between your horse and 3 other horses if you said it's a bay with a star and they put 7 horses out there in the round pen and they're going, which one's yours? Okay, that's why you want to be very specific about your Coggins test. How many people have grays? And that's the hardest one in the world. Oh my gosh, gray. Yeah, they're all gray. You look for whorls, you look for scars, you look for dark spots. Anything that is specific for your equine, make sure you put it on there, okay? Digital. I know a lot of times we have the digital Coggins now, which is great if you've got a good picture. If you don't have a good picture, that little picture is not worth a whole lot to me. Because if I'm looking at the head of that horse, and whoever took that picture, I see the horse's head, and I see the barn all the way at the other end of the pasture in the same picture. How big is that star? It's not much bigger than the pencil point. How am I going to tell that star and the difference with that horse? Okay? So you need good pictures on those digital Coggins, and that's why you're also supposed to write your description down at the bottom. Anything that's specific. And if they have tattoos, sometimes you may have registered animals. They got lip tattoos. The Mustangs, they'll have some sort of a weird looking brand. I can't tell you what they are because I can't hardly read them. But you'll have a brand on their neck. So there's different things. And if there's any brands at all, you want to make sure you put those on there, okay? So these charts are very, very important because that's how I have to go back and I have to fill these out because when I go back as a regulatory person, I'm making sure that this is the horse and this is the horse in question. Because when I go back, if I get a positive test and I have to go back to that owner and say, okay, we have to euthanize this horse, you're going to want to make sure that I know that it's the correct horse. Okay? So these are very, very important. To do an EIA test, your veterinarians all must be accredited and only USDA approved labs can run the test. And again, they're required for exhibition, moving in and out of state lines, and change of ownership. Okay? Regulatory response. I mentioned that just a little bit. If a private practitioner pulls a sample and it is not negative, then we are called out as a regulatory official. When we come out, we go back, we retest the horses. And if I go to a particular farm, I'm going to test everything that's there. I'm just going to go ahead and do it the first time that I'm out there, okay? Because I'm going to make sure that if this one's possibly positive, there may be other ones there, okay? So when we get called out, we're going to test everything on the farm, okay? And we have to do that, again, within 15 days. Of course, as soon as I get it, I'm there like the next day, sometimes the same day. It's just kind of dependent. The only reason I did not test that horse, the first horse, I was at the beach when I got called on Friday. I had actually taken off. It was close to Thanksgiving, so that's the reason I didn't get it till Monday. But anyway, we're there quick as we can. All right, so what do? We actually work with USDA. When we come out during any time of a response of this nature, then it's no charge to you. Okay? When we come out, it's for regulatory purpose only. We send it to USDA, and the federal government's actually paying for those tests. Okay? They help subsidize the testing part of it, even though we provide the labor, they provide the testing. Okay? Questions? I don't know about y'all, but don't y'all think a lot when you're yeah.
My vet, the Piroplasmosis, does not put any of those markings on the paper.
Nobody, they don't put the markings on that paper?
I asked about it, so we don't need it. The
You
picture
do.
is horrible.
You do need it.
Yeah.
If that's a continuing issue, I did not bring any cards. I'm sorry, I was in a different vehicle today. But I know if you get up with Michelle, Melissa, or anyone, then they can give you my number. You let me know who that veterinarian is, and I can work with them. I can do that. Yes.
Two questions. One, you need a Coggins for interstate travel as well, correct? What is the penalty for being caught traveling? Like if you get pulled over and you don't have one, what happens?
With us, the first offense is usually just a warning letter. After that, repeated offenses, then we issue a civil penalty, and that civil penalty can go up to $5,000 per violation. So each time you get caught, it just keeps going up. I'll just put it like that. We work with everybody, and most of the time that warning letter takes care of it.
Sure. And the other question I had as a boarding barn owner, so let's say a horse pops up with what is the quarantine procedure? Like how does that affect, does the barn have to shut down? What happens in that case?
If we find a positive horse, every equine on that farm is going to be quarantined for a minimum of 60 days after the positive horse is removed, okay? When I say removed, for the most part, it's gonna have to be euthanized, or if you have 640 acres that you can put it in the middle of, because that gives you a 1 acre, or a 1 mile radius around it, okay? Sorry. So, for the most part, they're euthanized. So once that animal is euthanized, then we start our countdown. We will come back out at day 30 because we want to just check and make sure everything's going okay, because I would rather catch, if there's another positive on the farm, I'd rather catch it earlier than later, because we want to get rid of those positive horses. That's the source of infection, so you got to get it out, okay? But you're looking at a minimum of 60 days, nothing will leave.
And so if a horse, when you come back in 30 days, let's say you find another positive, does that reset the clock?
Yep, that resets the clock. You got it.
So you're potentially looking at a very, very lengthy process.
Could be. Only once in my 28 years that I ever have something to come back on at day 30. That's why I test everybody, and most of the time you'll find most of them on the first test. But that's not to say it's always true, because in other states it has happened, and it can go all the way out to day 60. Because again, you got a 45-day incubation period, okay? Which that's why we push it out to 60 to make sure there's no question. Because every animal's different. We're going to show them the immune responses are different, okay? All right.
So what are the chances that there is one horse at one farm and then no one else gets it? Is that something that you've experienced before, or is it like a whole farm?
I've had multiple horses at certain farms. Out of the 23 premises, and I'll get to a little bit more of that in a second on our current outbreak, out of 23 premises, the first premise where we had the one that Dr. Lopresti found, and I tested everybody there, they had one other one that was positive. So there was 2 on that farm. I have 2 premises that both had 12 horses each. They had 5 horses on 2 different premises. Okay. The other ones, they've been singles. Okay. But it does exist. Okay. So it depends.
And this was all spread that was happening during not mosquito season, not, biting insect season, so imagine how bad it would be if we were.
Correct. Correct. Okay, quickly, another disease that we deal with, we're probably running out of time, I'm sorry. Piroplasmosis. It's actually another bloodborne disease. It's actually spread by ticks. Some of the symptoms, well, it's ticks, and it's also spread by blood, same way that the EIA can be spread, okay? Because some of our EIA horses also had piroplasmosis, so they had dual infections. Some of the same symptoms that you'll see with EIA, just ain't doing right, okay? So you'll see that, fever, anemia, weight loss. Again, it destroys the red blood cells, but it's caused by a parasite, which is a rickettsia, okay? The good thing about this one is it actually does have a treatment. We do blood work on this one also for being able to identify it. But there is a USDA approved treatment. It's, I don't know where Dr. Lopresti is, but she probably could give more information. It's very hard on the horse. It's not an easy treatment, okay? But it has been successful, and so it's got good promise to it. Once that horse is treated, it's a series of injections that it has to have 4 different treatments 3 days apart, okay? So you're looking at a good 12 days. And then we have to measure and do blood samples. After the last treatment, I have to test on day 30, 60, and 90 to make sure that the treatment actually worked. And then after that, I have to go out and test every 3 months until it goes completely negative and it loses all its antibodies. And that could be up to 2 years. Okay. Any question in the back? Okay. Sorry. Again, there's no vaccines, but at least we do have a treatment for this one. Okay. Your options, if you do have a horse that tests positive for piroplasmosis, then it can go into a lifetime quarantine. This one can do a lifetime quarantine since it's spread by ticks. Ticks only go out like 10 feet, so we have a 30-foot barrier. So you can keep that in an isolated 30 feet away from all other animals so that ticks can't get on it and then crawl off and get onto something else. And you have to treat them for ticks. So you got to keep them sprayed for ticks and stuff like that. And no vegetation in the area. But it's manageable. It's not like the EI at least. So it is manageable. Spread through ticks and not by flies. Once you have an piroplasmosis positive horse, then that horse is isolated away from the other ones again, at least 10 feet away with no vegetation and a 30-foot barrier between different farms, I should say. But at least a minimum of 10 feet, and then after that animal is isolated, then we go back out after 30 days and test for those, and then they would be released from quarantine. But you're looking at a minimum of 30 days. So what do we do if we find an EIA positive? Again, we go to the farm, we test all the animals there, but we have to do what we call a trace in and a trace out. I have to find out from you, where did you get this horse? What other horses have you brought in? Where have you been? Have you sold any horses? So anything that you had, I get to go chase it around all over the world, okay? Some of our cases, they were sent to Florida, they were sent to Georgia, and they were sent to South Carolina. So we've had to alert all the other states for where we had horsemen listed, okay? So it turns into a lot of work. Any horse that has been exposed to that positive horse, it's our job to find it and test it, okay? So that's where it's important. If you do a lot of trail rides, you go to a lot of shows, keep a calendar. Be nice, makes it easy for us, makes it easy for you to be able to give us that information, okay? Again, euthanasia or a lifelong quarantine, that's 3/4 of a mile minimum away from all other equine, which is very difficult here in North Carolina. Okay. The EP positive, if you got piroplasmosis, again, quarantine and isolation, you can isolate and treat, or you can euthanize. Okay. This is our current outbreak. Again, we had 23 sites. We found 19 positives. Trust me, it has not been easy. I've had to be there. If I was not there, and I was there for most of them, there was a few that I was not there and my technician was there. We've stood there, we've held hands, and we've cried with the rest of them. Okay, this is not easy. All these pictures of the real equine that you've seen, which is my mules, they're my babies. I'm a mule lover, but I love them all, okay? It has not been easy. It is not. It is so sad. So we started in Surrey County. Again, I've been in Surrey and Yadkin County, Forsyth, and Randolph. All of these have been related, except for the one in Wake County. Wake County is my newest one, and I'm still trying to figure out where that one even came from. It's not related to any of the other horses. All these other ones have all been related. They all work together at some point in time, okay? But my one in Wake County is different, so I'm still trying to chase that one down. And I'm about to the point that they're like, well, we did go on this trail ride. So, anyway, I'm getting ready to try to find everybody that went on a trail ride back in August. Again, as of right now, I have tested 199 horses related to this. 23 premises, 9 counties, we had 19 positives, 19 EIA positives in 7 counties, 8 piroplasmosis positives in 4 counties. 3 of those were euthanized, which part of that was 2 of those that were euthanized also had EIA. Okay. The remaining animals are going to stay under quarantine, and 1 has already received treatment, I'm working with another veterinarian to start treatment on the second one, and I've got 2 owners that have not decided what they wanna do with theirs yet, so we're still in limbo on the other 2. Questions? Any other questions? And that's me, riding my mule. That was my daughter many years ago. She's 23 now.